Welcome to Leadership Beyond Burnout. I'm your host, Dr. Kimberly L. Wilson. Today, we have a special guest with us, Michelle Singh. She is an award-winning teacher, a author, and a keynote speaker, as well as a diversity, equity, and inclusion expert. What we focus on in Leadership Beyond Burnout is how we can help emerging and senior women leaders lead beyond burnout. Welcome.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, I definitely wanted to have our audience get to know you better because you bring so many rich things to the table. Now, how long have you been an educator, and what has that journey been like to inspire you to create this company?
Yeah, so let's see. I have been an educator over 20 years. So I worked in the school system, in the public school system for 15 years. And I'm also an adjunct professor as well. I teach in teacher education. So I teach teachers how to be teachers, and I help teachers get certified in certain areas, like for gifted education, for example. Um, so 20 over 20 years in education, and the I guess what led me to creating my company. So many things led me to create my company.
I
Also,
can't imagine all the things that you must have seen in education because I know there was, I think it was second, maybe second or third grade. And I just had to give my son's teacher a $200 spa gift card because
mm,
I
mm,
know what she was dealing with
mm.
all year.
Listen, I'm so glad. Thank you on behalf of that teacher and all teachers. Thank you for recognizing that need for that emotional release, so for that mental rest that is absolutely needed. Outside of those kinds of burdens that we bear in education, the emotional stress and the mental stress, there's also other stressors, that you face in your workplace, in your schools, whether it's dealing with politics and everything
Yeah.
related to the politics
And
that
parents.
Yes, not not too bad, but the
Oh, good.
politics above it all, I say, it drives a lot of the rules and a lot of the guidelines and a lot of the policies and the procedures and the school system and the decisions that are made, and so I come from a background where education is the first priority. My family and I moved to America. I'm an immigrant, so I come from Jamaica. My family and I moved to America because we were seeking a better place for education. And so education has always been a priority, for me. So naturally, I always wanted to be a teacher, right? And when I first came here and I started school, I had good experience. I also had some not so great experiences fitting in and finding my place and feeling that sense of belonging in
Right.
my educational journey, in my educational setting. And it really took one teacher, one teacher to help me feel that security in that place in the classroom. And if it wasn't for that one teacher, I probably would not have pursued being the educator that I was when I was in the classroom, one who valued diversity, one who valued the sense of belonging and making sure each student felt like that. And so
So
I,
you actually paid forward that what was put into you as a student and are sharing your gift with the world.
oh yeah, absolutely. So I tell the story about that one teacher because I used her and my experience with her as a model for the teacher that I wanted to be. And for the teacher that
Mm.
I even wanted my own child to have. I have a daughter, she's 19. She goes to Howard University. She just finished her freshman year. So she's now a sophomore. And
Yes.
she had her own experiences while in school that were not so great, where I had to step
Mm.
in, where I wanted her to have a bunch of those Miss Fernandez's, who was my teacher's name, because she didn't have that sense of belonging, being a Black child, being in those classroom settings where her voice was silent. She sat in
Wow.
the back and wasn't heard, and wasn't seen, and wasn't valued fully for what she could truly contribute. And I saw many students like that, many students who were Black and brown that had those experiences. And like I said, that was me too, back when I first came up to this country. And so I never wanted students to experience that lack of safety that I felt, and that I even saw my own daughter feel. And that's what drew me to leaving my 15-year career as
Wow.
a public school teacher and just quit. And then
Wow.
started this company so that I could help teachers create that inclusive space and create that sense of belonging for their students, especially their students who are Black and brown like me and you.
Wow. So I think one of the things I heard in here is that that calling was so strong for you that rather than look for that, oh, here's my retirement because you were, was it 20, 30 years, you all get to retire. I mean, you were either
Oh,
halfway there or
I was
almost there, or
vested.
5 years. You just said,
Listen.
I have to, there is something bigger that I'm being called to.
Yes, absolutely. I was vested. I had actually worked my way up from being a classroom teacher to being a teacher leader to being a department chair to moving all the way up to where I was working at the district level. So I had
Wow.
worked and moved up in my career to a point where I felt like, okay, I made it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
even so, some of the issues and the challenges became blaring, and I
Mm,
realized that, well, there's not so much that I could do in this capacity, but I
right.
feel like there's more that I'm called to do. And I took a leap of faith. I flew. Steve Harvey talks about jumping. I flew.
You flew right to your new calling.
Right
Let's
into it.
let's take a quick commercial break and we're going to hear more about that.
Greetings, I'm Angel Marie Monticelli, host of Energize You TV, every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. Go to Fresh Takes right here on E360 and get Reikified and energized today.
Okay, and welcome back. So you flew to this new career. Did
Yes.
did you have it all formulated, or is it just like I'm in my calling and I'm just going to act?
No, there was a lot of fear, a lot of confusion, a lot of unknowns.
Mhm.
There was nothing strategic or worked out. I'm gonna be totally honest. Nah.
No, you're just like I gotta go. So
Yes, I felt that. I just felt like I couldn't. My time had expired. I I had to do something else.
now I this brings up another question for me. So excuse me for just hopping back just a little bit.
No problem.
So I hear that you had this calling pulling you forward and out of that environment, but I'm curious, was there something that was so untenable in your
Listen,
in
oh,
your past that said, I
ma'am,
have got to go?
ma'am, yes, it took me being completely uncomfortable.
Mm,
Because if I wasn't uncomfortable, I would have been complacent. I would have been some challenges in that work environment to propel me towards more.
mm,
Um, if I didn't face those things, I would have never sought to do more.
right. And
Yeah.
what were some of your early warning signs or your later warning signs that said, I got to go?
I
It,
would say, okay, some of the just the signs altogether was Uh,
And they can be personal, they can be internal in something with
yeah.
the infrastructure, whatever makes sense for you.
Okay, so I would say it starts with a lot of restriction. When
Mm,
you feel like the things that you know work and you have
right.
done with your own students and you've done in your own school, and you're the expert on it. I have the degrees, I have the experience, but you get a lot of pushback. So I would say
Mm,
it starts with that. It also starts with what it did to my well-being and my overall lifestyle. I'm talking about spending 2 hours a day one way in traffic,
oh,
right? So 4 hours total. So imagine the toll that had on my physical health, my overall well-being.
I
I'm
can't.
right. I'm talking about things that affected me to where I had to go to work, and I had I had my Get Your Mind Right playlist with my gospel music, because if I didn't get my mind right, who knows who would have got what was really on my mind that day.
So yeah. So wait a minute. Wait a minute. So are you saying that you needed the spirit of the Lord to check
I
you before you
list
went in?
to check me in the elevator before I stepped out of the elevator. I
Oh
needed
wow.
I needed the yes, I did.
Okay. All right.
Yes. So I had, there were a lot of things that affected me physically, my well-being physically, mentally, but thank God that I did grow spiritually,
It sounds like it.
because of this. And also, I would say professionally, because as I was facing a lot of that pushback, I also found a way to grow my own knowledge base, my own network outside of that. And that's what really helped me to see that there was a life outside of the public school system once I started growing my network and making connections and seeing the world outside of that.
Huh. So what you're saying is that the bureaucracy, the discomfort gave you permission and actually a yearning to grow in a different direction. It created a new path for you.
Yeah, it created a path for me to see a way out.
Mm,
Yes, because honestly, if I had stayed where I was, my health was already going downhill. And if I had stayed where I was, it would not have been great for me mentally, physically, emotionally. After I left, teaching, after I left that career, I won't say after I left the public school system, I would say I did see a therapist. I started seeing a therapist consistently. I started taking care of my health, my physical health. Um, I have lost a ton of weight since then. My physical health, a lot of my health issues have been restored. Um, I have been able to just, have a healthier lifestyle where I'm able to implement practices, I would say rest practices in my daily routine, where I would not have been able to do these things regularly because I wouldn't have been enough hours in the day.
wow.
So
Wow.
it's totally changed my life, um, stepping away when I did step away. Now, I'm not saying that my life ain't easy now. Now, I still wear multiple hats. I am
Right.
still an educator. I have my own consulting company, so I still get to teach. I'm also, like I mentioned, a professor. I also have 4 dogs, so I'm a dog mom, and I have a human child, as I mentioned before. She's
Right.
she's in college, so she doesn't, she doesn't I live in Florida. She's in DC in during the school year going to school. And of course I'm a wife, and and a whole bunch of other things as well. So
Right. And you bring up such a good point, because I think one of the things that never ceases to amaze me about women and women in leadership roles is that we wear so many hats, so many professions: the butcher, the baker, the candlestick
yeah.
maker, the accountant, just everything rolled into one, and do it with so much grace and ease. And that's how we end up getting burnt out.
Yes, yes, and then you still find other things to do. Like on top of all of that, I am working on my doctorate as well. So there is that.
Right, because why not? There's not enough stress going on.
Exactly, right? So yes, we always find it finds us.
Right, right, right. Now, I'd love to hear about some of your work with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that's been received in your consulting work. Like, have you found that most teachers welcome it, or what that's been like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in the company, we actually have a framework called the Equal Methodology, and the Equal Methodology has 5 steps or 5 parts, and it focuses on 5 different areas. So, the culture, the school culture is the first one. The second
Mhm.
one is the practices of the teacher or the pedagogy. The third one relates to the skill sets of the students, like their soft skills, things, their future ready skills. The fourth step is relationship, stakeholder relationship outside of just the teacher and the student. And then the fifth one is equitable assessments. And so everything that we do, all of the content that we create, all of the webinars and the workshops that we lead address those 5 areas. And so whenever we have trainings or workshops or programs or anything that we do, um, I'll tell you this: teachers have shared that it is a place where they can talk about words like equity and diversity in our space versus being able to do that in their in their schools or their district, because they are prohibited from using certain words in their schools and districts because of certain legislature, right?
Right,
And so when I talk about those topics and I talk about strategies that promote inclusivity and diversity and equity in our content, in our trainings, in our workshop, it almost like it's like a breath of fresh air for the teachers to be able to say the word out out loud.
right. And as you're talking about that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your governor,
Ma'am,
I think
ma'am,
that your governor happens to be an enemy.
ma'am. Okay, so I guess that's probably why why it's such a safe place in my state, because of the legislation that we have here in the state of Florida. Yes, and that prevents a lot of these topics to be you know discussed in the schools, in the public school system.
Right.
Yeah.
I, I, I- and I know you can't say it, so I'm just gonna say it. Uh, I think he really needs some type of competency test, because he comes up with the craziest, most outlandish, divisive policies in his political agenda is just questionable, because it seems like he truly is not concerned with the citizens in his state.
Inhumane. It's inhumane. It censors. Um, it does take away the humanity of people when
Right,
you're in the second most diverse school district and you can't use that word.
right.
Right? Yeah.
So what word can you all use?
Other words besides that.
Different?
Different. Yes.
Well, that
Sure.
doesn't seem very inclusive. Just the word different. Uh,
But yeah,
so those are some of the obstacles that your
those,
company
those,
is
yes,
in place to combat and provide a
exactly.
safe harbor.
Exactly. Being able to be a voice, because the teachers themselves can't speak those things uh, legally, right? And
Wow.
so having a space to be able to talk about it and teach about it, is what we offer. And other things, we do diversity, equity, and inclusion training as well for corporations, helping to them to discover unconscious biases and misconceptions and things like that. So that's also other work we do outside of just working with teachers. We do corporate trainings as well.
Right. And which then really makes me wonder what is the path for that type of training now that the Supreme Court
Yeah,
has come down with their decision. It almost feels like we are
going backwards.
flying backwards instead of
Yes, we're going backwards. Yes.
Mm,
We thought we were making strides since 2020, right?
right.
And now everything is back in reverse. Yep.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and it takes people like you and other companies like that to really keep those issues in the forefront so that
Yeah.
they don't get silenced.
Yeah, it's like the elephant in the room that nobody wants to touch because they can't touch it because they might get sued. But because I feel like with us, we're not tied to the school districts in that way. We are our own company, and we're always going to speak about the things that benefit students, particularly students of color. And so, yeah, I am totally okay with talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion when it comes to leveling the playing field in education for students of color.
Right, right. And let's hold that thought as we take another commercial break.
What's up? It's Brian Randolph, host of Keeping It Real with Randy Boy. You can catch me every Saturday morning at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time on Vitality TV, right here on E360 TV. Check me out, Randy Boy.
So I really love that you are uniquely positioned so that your voice is not silenced. And when I think about some of the educators in those spaces, that must be incredibly stressful. So I'm curious, how do you help them if your environment is one of the few places where they can use words that really reflect their students?
Yeah, so again, offering that safe space, but I also I think it's very important to address the holistic teacher, just like we strive to address the student holistically, their social, their emotional, their academic, their cultural needs. So I believe that, teachers need the same kind of love and the same kind of attention and the same kind of respect. We need to honor the holistic teacher. So one of the things that I'm doing this for the month of July 1 to July 31st, is a Restful Teacher Challenge. And so the Restful Teacher Challenge is all about the ways that teachers can rest and can implement resting routines and resting practices in their day. And I and
Wow.
I'm using the 7 forms of rest. So like creative rest and social rest and emotional rest and mental rest. I'm using those forms of rest to show teachers how they could implement activities like, let's say, being part of a book club as a form of social rest, or going on a culinary adventure as a form of creative rest. And
Mm,
just little tidbits every single day. And the 7 forms of rest is based on the research of Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith. So it comes from, her research. But the way I tailor it is for teachers, how this rest can help you recharge and rejuvenate for the upcoming school year. Because let's be honest, we don't have time to really spend 2 hours a day, or 1 hour a day, or whatever it is, engaging in rest, so that we, a lot of times we don't even get enough, get our good night's sleep. So
Wow.
what can we do to re-energize ourselves in different ways, our creativity, um, our emotions, so that our emotions aren't built up and affect our bodies, our physical health. And
Right.
one of the things that I'm doing with the rest challenge is every Tuesday and Thursday is, we have guest experts who talk about different forms of rest. We had a massage therapist and nurse, licensed nurse, last week, talk about the mental and the emotional rest and what it does to the physical body, and how massage therapy can help to relieve a lot of that stress. We had another doctor come on to talk to us, last Tuesday, about different ways that you can rest with aromatherapy, and
Mhm.
having a perspective item. I mean, just such creative ways that you can incorporate rest into your daily routine, your weekly routine, and create a rest rhythm for yourself, or create a rest
Okay.
recipe for yourself. This week, tomorrow, and Thursday, we have a neuropathic doctor who's going to talk to us about nutrition and rest. So
Okay.
we have some pretty awesome guest speakers, and rest descriptions and rest ideas. So if you go to, you see here on the screen, lctegift.com, that's actually an ebook for the 7 forms of rest that you
Oh,
can
beautiful.
explore.
Now, is there even just to give us a tidbit, is digital rest included?
There's a digital detox from rest.
I
You
definitely I did that for about 6 months.
But let's say your creative rest relates to you, creating something digitally. Like, I know for me, I love designing, graphic designing. And so for me, I flow when I'm doing that on the computer. Like, I'm in
Mm,
my flow. So that's a form of rest for me.
mm. Okay. Okay. So I love that you said their rest recipe, which to me is acknowledging that some forms of rest may be annoying to one person,
Yeah.
but heaven sent for someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. You can have someone who is a more, uh, social person, and so social rest is their 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 area that rejuvenates them the most. And then you may have someone like me. My highest area of need for rest is sensory, and
Mm,
so I get sensory overload very easily. So if I go to a place where there's a lot of lights and noise and people, I have to I have to disconnect and spend a lot of time individually to recharge.
right.
And yeah, there's going to be some areas of rest that people are going to gravitate to more, based on who they are.
Right. So I'm curious, with their sensory overload, it was that part of your trajectory to moving outside of the classroom a little bit, because I know when I get around a bunch of children, it's like, oh,
You know what? I've never thought about it like that, and I don't think that I could see that going two ways. That could be why the sensory rest is what I need the most, because I was just always around people a lot, right? Um, but then it could be, well, I absolutely adored my students, and they made me, they made me feel rejuvenated. So that's something I'm gonna have to really think about, and kind of reflect on, to see if that affected me that much. I do know that when I go to conferences, for example, and I'll present at conferences, or I'll speak at conferences, I do know that I have to take at least 2 days after the conference to recharge. And I do have to be by myself to do that. Because when you're at a conference, you're among so many people, you're talking, you're presenting, you're sharing, you're meeting, you're networking, you're going to this event, that event. And
Right.
so after that, I have to recharge by myself.
Right. Right. So now I thank you for sharing that. I have to ask you because it just dawned on me the stereotype, right, for people of Jamaican descent is
Mhm.
that y'all work 50, 11
I was
jobs.
gonna say we got one of my really good friends. You have 3 jobs. Yes, and the funny part is, yes, I do actually. Yes, have always had more than one job. Yes, because when you're a
So
teacher,
I'm
lots of side hustles. Listen, you have a lot.
so I'm just wondering with you coming with so before I asked you about your your cultural heritage and what you learned from your family about burnout and rest and the restful teacher, how that I wanted to see if any of that stereotype
Wow.
is true, and how you dare to kind of back away from that a little.
Huh. You know, oh my gosh, you're really having me think about some things here. So, yes, in my family, everybody always had more than one job. They did. They did. So one of the things that I came to realize recently about my family was their entrepreneurial spirit, right?
Mm,
Because I didn't really honor that about my family until I became an entrepreneur myself, which was, it's fairly recent. I started my business in 2020. And so looking back growing up in Jamaica, my family, my mom's side of the family is who I grew up with. So my mom's side of the family, my grandparents, they had a shop, they had a bar, you know, they were entrepreneurs, right?
right.
And even my
And here you are, we're having one job.
listen, okay. And my father, so here's the interesting thing. So my father, he never worked for anybody else. He
Mm,
always had his own business. My grandfather, on my dad's side, he owned, I called it the equivalent of the neighborhood Home Depot. So he had like a hardware store. And so
okay.
I grew up around all of that, right? I grew up
Right.
right where my grandparents had their bar. I grew up going to my grandfather on my father's side and helping him to sell in his warehouse and helping to sell. And I remember counting money in the bar and being given permission to sell to customers and collecting money. And that made me feel so grown up and proud to be able to do that. And so, as I was kind of, reflecting and going through my own journey of reflection, I realized, well, this entrepreneurship thing has really been in my family, and I just never gave it the credit that it deserved, because moving here to America from Jamaica, the focus was always education, because education was
Mm,
the way out. And it's, I guess for them, it switched their mindset from having their own business and doing, the business, the entrepreneurial thing in Jamaica, to come into America having to find a job,
right.
find some kind of career, right? And then working for somebody else because you want to support your family the best way that you can. And education is the way to be successful. And so that's what we were taught in our generation. And so that's what I started to impart on my daughter until I became an entrepreneur, to where now I'm trying to expose her to entrepreneurship life now that I've fully embraced it. So I have always seen my family work multiple jobs. Um, and so it just kind of became natural for me to do that as well. Like, whether it's, having a consulting, um, a consulting job during the summers when as I was a full-time teacher, or being a professor while I'm a teacher, or you know, at one point I even did Mary Kay while I was a teacher. So yeah, there's been a lot of
Oh,
stuff.
that wasn't in your bio. Mary Kay wasn't in the
No,
bio.
no, no, that was real quick.
So you didn't get the pink Cadillac.
I did not get the pink Cadillac. Mm-mm.
So, and I think that's such an important legacy when we talk about overwork and overwhelm and whether and how it's perceived culturally based upon your experience, because it seems like part of correct me if I'm wrong, but what seems to be coming through for me is that when you are doing multiple things, but multiple things that you love, that it doesn't create that feeling of burnout for you. You kind of get in the zone. But when there are restrictions and you aren't free to do what you need to do,
Mm.
then it becomes more taxing. Or am I completely off
No,
base?
I think you have a point there. Yes, because when I'm doing the work, for my company, and I'm creating content, and I'm doing things like this Restful Teacher Challenge, which I'm totally enjoying, it doesn't seem like work to me. It really
Mm,
doesn't. And I'm doing that while I'm doing chapter 2 of the dissertation, while I'm doing everything else that's happening in my life. And so when it is, when it's flowing for me, um, it doesn't feel like work.
mm,
I'm doing, I feel like when it's flowing for me, it's in alignment, and it doesn't feel like work, because I know that I'm doing it, and it's something that I'm doing according to my purpose, my calling. Now, I'm
mhm.
not saying that everything that happens in my business flows, because there's certainly things that I got to do for the business that I that is totally work. The financial pieces. and
Bookkeeper.
yes, I have a bookkeeper and an accountant. Exactly, right? And that when I first started, to be quite honest, I was not happy being on lives like these. It made me very nervous. It made my anxiety high to be, to be on a live like this, to do a live myself, just to
Right.
be on social media, like on a public page, versus my private Facebook, where's my friends and my family since college
Right.
and things like that. And so I'm getting out of that shell, and here I am with you talking live.
Yeah, right. Now I'm wondering about um, your experiences since you are in your zone and you're in your purpose and you're feeling aligned. What is it like when you're training and teaching teachers, and like you said, you offer this space for them to say things that some of them may not get to say in the classroom? What is it like to be a vessel for some of their pain?
Mm. It's an honor to be able to even have that space available for them.
Mhm.
Um, you know, it's an honor and a privilege just to be able to hear them, and for them to even trust the space, trust who's in the space, being able to create a space where they feel that safe to be able to say those things. Um, and so, it, you know, it's really, I don't know how else to say that, except that it's an honor to just be able to be part of something like that, where they feel that comfortable and that safe to speak and to share, and to be able to be open with people that they only knew for an hour, or they just met an hour ago, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's very powerful to me, to be able to kind of curate those kinds of experiences. Um, it really is done from the heart, truly.
Mhm.
It truly is. Like when I have a workshop, it takes a lot of time to plan it, because I want it to be an experience. I don't want it to just be a sit and get. I'm going to teach you for a whole hour and you're going to sit there and listen to me. Not
Ooh,
at all. No, I want it
we'll
to be
sit and get. Okay.
I want it to be an experience, but I want it to be a collaborative experience, because everybody brings expertise and experience to the table. And if we don't give them a chance to share it, how will we know? How can we learn from each other? How can we
Right.
honor the diversity and the diverse ideas if we don't provide a way for them to share it? And so I'm proud to say that I'm able to do that when I have my programs and my training, because I truly believe that, I truly believe that the teachers have so much to give, so much to share, so much knowledge, so much of
Right.
their experience, and I value that.
So you've taken what some people might see as a burden, and you see the beauty in that and are able to give it back and reflect to them a place to channel some of that and help them find what they can do amongst their restrictions. Do I have it right?
Yeah, I would say that. I I want them. Okay, these challenges are going to be there whether or not we like it. They exist legally. They're there. Um, we do have to be able to talk about it, but we also have to be able to come up with solutions to address them, right? So if we can't say the word equity, or if we can't do this, what can we do instead to still meet the needs of our students who need to have those strategies to help them build the skills that they need to function? And
Right.
so yeah, we do talk about it, but we it's more solution oriented.
Right. And I love that because one of the big parts of in burnout is a lack of personal and professional efficacy. So when you feel blocked, like there are things you can't change and you can't
Mhm.
do anything about,
Yeah.
people just give up. And it's so sad to see a teacher or anyone who starts something with such passion and desire, because nobody goes to invest in school to be like, oh, I really don't like this and I don't want to do my best work. Like
Yeah.
they're going because they love it. And when you see that light go out of someone's eyes because of the bureaucracy, the system, the workplace culture, that's really
Yeah.
tragic.
Yeah. And just I try to equip, equip them to with tools and strategies that they can take back, just to make the process easier, make those challenges become less burdensome. And so that's my goal, is to be able to equip teachers with the tools and strategies that they need for them to be successful themselves, but also that makes their students successful.
Beautiful. And we're going to take one more commercial break before we talk about how they can get in touch with you. And we definitely want to hear about your book and all the good things that come from that.
Hi, I'm Sarah Stockham, and I'm host of Simply Sarah. Join me Thursdays at 3 p.m. Pacific on the Achieve TV network for the best energetic tools to elevate your amazing life right here on E360 TV.
Welcome back, Michelle. And definitely share with us your book that you have on Amazon and how that plays into diversity, equity, inclusion, and whether it's part of your curriculum for teachers.
Sure. So I would say the most recent is, it's actually a reflective journal. I This is definitely a joy to share,
And I
because
love the artwork, by the way.
thank you. Because it's something that I've done and gone through the process of, and how I even created it. So it's a reflective journal because it has three parts, right? It has quotes, but these quotes are tied to diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're quotes by Black and Brown people, and they're about perseverance, they're about resilience, because if you're in this work of DE&I and belonging, you're going to have challenges. You're going to have restrictions. You're going to have red tape. There's going to be bureaucracy. And so these quotes are going to be helpful to help you, you know, get through that. So, for example, there's a quote that says, "I will not take but for an answer," by Langston Hughes. Right. So there's a place for you to reflect on the quotes. In addition to the quotes, there are affirmations. And the affirmations are all aligned to the 5 steps of the methodology that we have, our equal methodology. So it focuses, the affirmations focus on school culture, on the practice, the teacher practice, on the student skills, on the relationships with stakeholders, and on equitable assessments. And we have those affirmations and a place for you to write your own affirmations. And these are action steps for you to reach your educational equity goals that are related to the affirmation. For example, I integrate technology or gamification in the assessment process. And you have a place to write the action steps that's going to help you make that affirmation come to life.
Oh, wow.
And finally, there are reflection questions. And these reflection questions are, again, aligned with the methodology. And they will help you to reflect on your teaching skills so that you can make your content and your practice more equitable and excellent for your students. So here's an example of one of the reflection questions. How will your students learn a practical future ready skill from the activities in your lesson? And so, as I said, I've gone through this whole process with all of these quotes. These quotes are very personal to me. The affirmations that I wrote related to the methodology, and the reflection questions were questions that I used as a national board certified teacher. You have to be a reflective teacher. Reflection is a really integral part of the national board certification process. And these are some of the questions that I reflected on, continue to reflect on as I'm an educator. And so I'm very, very pleased. This is the Equity and Excellence in Teaching Reflective Journal for educators who are seeking to create an inclusive space and address educational disparities.
I love that. And even as you're talking about it, I can see its applicability not only in K through 12, but as well for adjunct and full-time faculty at the university level and graduate student level. I know for the students at Northwestern University, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion is a very integral part in the training that I do with future counselors. So,
Nice. Yeah.
do you use it with professors as well?
Well, I've never tried to use it with professors, but now that you've said it, it definitely, I can see a fit.
Okay. Where's my cut? I need my cut. No, just kidding. Oh, thank you. You've been such a gift, and I love the work that you're doing out there with teachers and helping them to be resilient and to have fresh ideas and be able to serve their students. One of the things I think that I should share with you, I had to actually rebuild my daughter's self-esteem after a 3rd grade teacher. She wouldn't tell me because she knows mommy is going to rain down all hellfire.
Mama bear.
Yeah.
That's what my daughter called it.
And she didn't tell me until like almost near the end of the school year. This woman would just terrorize her whenever she would try to answer questions or show her brilliance. Until she became a child I didn't recognize. I started to wonder, like, why are you so quiet now? Like, that is not my child. She picks up, she says them, she has opinions, she challenges. And this woman all but had her silent. So important work you're doing.
Yeah, and those are the stories that unfortunately we hear too often. listen, I've experienced it with my own child who started biting her nails in third grade because she had a teacher who terrified her in that way as well. So that is the drive behind the work that I do, to ensure that the teachers who teach our students, because 54% of our students in public schools are Black and Brown, that's
Right.
more than the majority. And so if they don't have the skills to see the joy, see the humanity, see the brilliance, see the gift in our Black and Brown students, 54% of those students are going to be silenced,
Absolutely.
right?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, yes, Black, Brown, and Asian students are very important, and everyone is important to them. And I just want to thank you for being with me today.
You are welcome. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Righty.
Oh,
Thank you. This is Dr. Kimberly L. Wilson with Leadership Beyond Burnout. We appreciate your time seeing us. And until next time, we'll see you Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.